I'll now go over the material that you'll need to know for test number 3, and this will be on chapter number 3, Discovering the History of Dispensationalism. Before I do, there's a couple of things that I just got busy and got too fast with and didn't go over. Wanted to give you a couple of things real quick. Number one, I did not highlight, it's in your chart, I did not highlight the shared view of classic and Bible-believing dispensationalism as it relates to Roman Catholicism being apostate. That's a very important point that I did not take the time to articulate. But when you study Larkin's work and you study Scofield's works and some of the classic dispensationalists, they're real strong on the great whore of Revelation 19 being Rome. And correctly so. That dynamic or tenet, I should say, is lost in revised dispensationalism, and as the apostasy moves forward with progressives and even the modern Laodicean age, no one wants to call the Catholic Church out like they should be called out. And so I failed to mention that. I just wanted to highlight that. That is a very, very important tenet, not just of Protestantism, but of fundamentalism of Bible-believing dispensationalism. The next thing is that the King James only movement, obviously since the King James movement is larger now than it ever has been, the tendency for some groups to be hyper-dispensationalist and still retain their integrity as far as the King James Bible goes is apparent. And some of these people actually come out of the Bible-believing movement from either Pensacola Bible Institute under Dr. Ruttman's school or ministry or some of his writings. But nonetheless, there are some that are King James only. However, when you study their fundamental teachings and you trace their lineage as to the founders of their movement, Stam, which was a Calvinist as well, Bullinger, which was a Calvinist, and you study their teachings, you find out they all correct the Bible. And what you'll find with the hyper King James only guys is that they will correct it in other ways by way of interpretation. So they're not as steadfast a King James only Bible believer as they try to claim. But there are some out there now, and I would say in the past 20 or 30 years that's become more dominant. But before that, your hypers were just like all the other hypers. They all corrected the King James Bible without reservation. So those two things I wanted to add, make sure I highlighted that to try to be as thorough as possible. All right, this will be the material that you'll need to know for the test for chapter number 3. It's only 25 questions, so it's not a lot. Won't be too bad. All right, you'll need to know the words that are changed in 2 Timothy 2:15. The words that are changed in 2 Timothy 2:15 in the New Bibles. You'll need to be familiar with the phrases in 2 Timothy 2:15. You'll need to know something about the criticism that Darby received, and consequently that's passed down today, that it's an antagonism that critics of the rapture use against dispensationalists. The criticism that Darby received about what he learned about the rapture. You'll need to know that pre-tribulation, what the pre-tribulation rapture highlights, or what the pre-tribulation rapture points to in theology. There's a brand of theology that the pre-tribulation goes with. You know it's not covenant theology. So I gave you that one, but there's a brand of theology that the pre-tribulation rapture goes with. You'll need to know about the kind of tying into the last lesson, how that the reformers were not necessarily dispensational in their approach to interpreting Scripture, but they were blank. They were this particular thing. We studied those two schools of interpretation. You'll need to know the school of interpretation that the reformers were. You'll need to know the difference in progressive and advanced revelation. You'll need to know the difference in progressive and advanced revelation. You'll need to know which system is older, premillennialism or dispensationalism. Which system is older, premillennialism or dispensationalism. You'll need to know approximately when John Nelson Darby lived. And you'll need to know why his writings were so influential in subsequent years and in church history. Why Darby's writings are so influential. You'll need to know what C.I. Scofield was mainly known for. What C.I. Scofield is mostly known for. And then you'll need to know the different conferences we've listed and talked about from time to time. I think the chart was actually in last week's study, so you might have to refer back to that. There are 3 main conferences, Bible conferences. You'll need to know those. You'll need to know which person encouraged C.I. Scofield to edit his reference Bible, to put out or promote or to formulate and create a reference Bible. Which person encouraged him to do that? You'll need to know a little bit about Clarence Larkin. You need to know some things about Clarence Larkin. You'll need to know the greatest publication that Larkin put out, Larkin's greatest work. You'll need to know these views, these shared views of classic and Bible-believing dispensationalists. You'll need to be able to pinpoint those and understand those. You'll need to know the first best-selling dispensational book. The first best-selling dispensational book. Very first real popular book that dealt with dispensational views. You'll need to describe the teaching of progressive dispensationalism. You'll need to be able to describe the teaching of progressive dispensationalism. You'll need to know a little bit about the revised period of dispensationalism and what the main focus was of revised dispensationalism. Why did they do what they did, and what did they do? What is revised dispensationalism? You'll need to be able to pinpoint the group from which Bible-believing dispensationalism comes from. The group from which Bible-believing dispensationalists come from. You'll need to know the most prolific author of Bible-believing dispensationalists. What's the one author that's written more and put out more material on Bible-believing dispensationalism. And then you'll need to know a little bit about the revised King James only group. And then you'll need to know just some of the basic points of hyper-dispensationalism. We have some of them up here on the chart still. Some of the basic points of hyper-dispensationalism.